nothing but the truth. Hello, I'm Raj Chengappa from India Today and your host for Nothing But the Truth. Every week, we will deal with key issues of concern and bring you perspectives and clarity as to why these matter to you and the one clear truth that emerges. Recently, we've all watched how Indian scientists, space scientists, created lunar history, and this is a favorite subject of mine. I, in fact, went down to the mission control after that, spoke to all the scientists, and understood what was the importance in terms of their achievements, as well as how they went about turning what was apparently a failure in 2019 when Chandrayaan 2 went down, and making it a superlative success, which even Prime Minister Modi congratulated them for. But the Space Department is not satisfied with just doing that. As you know, they are already on to Aditya, India's first solar mission that will study the chromosphere and the corona of the sun. And apart from that, they have a whole range of other programs lined up, including the very exciting Gaganyaan project, which is to put Indian astronauts into an orbit for the first time ever using our own spacecraft. Apart from that, there have been major changes that the Modi government has introduced. In 2020, in the midst of COVID, they freed up the space sector. Before that, since 1969, when the Indian Space Research Organization was formed, it was the sole institution that used to conduct the space program, including building rockets, satellites, and any other requirements that we needed. But of course, ISRO did involve a lot of the private sector, largely to provide subsystems, but private players were not allowed to build their own rockets and satellites. In this new policy that has happened, the private sector has been permitted not only to build launchers and satellites like ISRO is doing, but also use the Indian Space Research Organization facilities to do that. Now, this is a tremendous breakthrough, and that has happened in the US and other places much earlier. This is a game changer, and as you've seen, people like Elon Musk and others of SpaceX have, in fact, almost been on par with the established space companies like the Boeing and Lockheed. So this hopefully will trigger a complete sort of private entrepreneurship bonanza that will make India, not only in terms of the technology that we have demonstrated to be a frontline space power, but also expand the enormous business that is over there. Currently, India contributes only 2% of the world's space business with $8 billion. If they have to tap into the large $400 to $500 billion space market across the world, it is important that India, not only the government of India, but also private sector collaborate with ISRO, and we build the kind of satellites, launchers, as well as space applications that can make Indian space sector grow enormously. To get more details of this, I had the privilege of interviewing Dr. Jitendra Singh, who's the Union Minister of State for Science and Technology, Atomic Energy, and Space, among other things that's there. And he talked to me not only of what the tremendous success of Chandrayaan means for Indian space as well as for the world, but also looking ahead at India's space ambitions. Do listen to this interview. Hello, I'm Raj Chengappa from India Today, and welcome to this special interview with Dr. Jitendra Singh, who is Minister of State, among other things, for Science and Technology, Department of Space, and Atomic Energy. But the most important thing at this critical moment is that you're overseeing the Space Department.
Thank you, Raj Chengappa. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. And my first question is, Chandrayaan has been a huge success. The three major objectives of Chandrayaan, which was to land on the moon, have a lander there, have a rover go down, as well as do scientific experiments. Two of them have already been achieved. The third is on its way of doing it. If you had to assess the importance of Chandrayaan to the Indian space program and overall, what would you say it would be?
I think at 2 or 3 levels. Scientifically speaking, Chandrayaan 3 is going to get us inferences, conclusions, pictures, which would be possibly first of its kind for the entire scientific community across the world.
And despite the fact that we have had over 60, 70 missions already, this is
absolutely.
Right. Other countries that have done
yes,
it, yes.
Also because It was the Chandrayaan series which for the first time brought home the evidence of the presence of water molecules on the lunar surface.
Right.
In spite of the fact that we had started our space journey much, much later compared to some of the other countries like the United States or the then Soviet Union, which were already on the verge of landing a human being on the surface of the moon when we started off. So this mission of ours, the Chandrayaan 3, is going to carry forward that initial information that it obtained through spectrometry A, plus it would be also evaluating the atmospheric conditions, the plasma ion electron conditions, the plasma atmosphere, the soil composition, the mineralogical compositions, the seismosity of the moonquake vulnerabilities, the rocks, etc. So the experiments are going to be at multiple levels and in situ experiments. And that is the reason also why the entire world is looking up to it with a huge
and can you explain simply why is it so important to map that particular region and what will it give the world when you say everybody's watching?
Yes. Also because this is the virgin area.
Right.
It had never been explored or accessed before. Most of the missions earlier have been close to the equator. And this assumes significance scientifically because the possibility of more number of craters over there and larger room to experiment with hydrogen, oxygen, possibilities of the presence of waters or ice evidence. So that makes it interesting. And also because, and the second significant, as you said, importance, I think, is that it has very evidently established India now as a frontline nation as far as space technology is concerned. And from that point of view, I cannot but help referring to Prime Minister Modi, because it's largely been possible, this huge quantum jump, which actually the world is now amazed how it has happened in the last few years after Prime Minister Modi took a very courageous decision to break the taboos of the past and to throw open the gates of Sriharikota to the rest of the world, and in fact which was popularly described in the media as the unlocking of the space sector.
But I'm going to come back to that question. Here, I think what is also commendable is that you had a major failure.
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, while Chandrayaan 2 was partially successful, one of the main objectives to have a lander there as well as do the rover hadn't worked. What is the, what was the kind of effort you all had to do to turn it around to make sure that it does succeed as it does?
Yeah. No, see, at the outset, I would not describe Chandrayaan 2 as a failure.
I said partial.
Yeah, in the sense that statistically our record is much better, because if you see the other missions, whether the American missions, the Russian missions, there are hardly any which have been successful absolutely in the first attempt.
Correct.
Some of the American missions took even 3 or 4 attempts.
That's right. In Russia, we saw recently Lunar 25 went down despite all the experience they had. Yes.
So to that extent, we had a lander in place which was actually functioning. You remember when Chandrayaan 3 went, it welcomed it. He said, welcome buddy.
Yes.
So to that extent, of course, it didn't go off the way in which we had envisaged. So that was a huge disappointment. Now, after that, of course, learning from that experience, the design was different, the structure was different, even the software was done up. There were, and meanwhile, of course, there's an upgradation of technology happening each day.
Right.
And simultaneously, not many trials, series of trials. I must commend the team ISRO having worked day and night, this mission team having worked day and night, rehearsals, trials in the sense with dummy moon and all those things. I mean, they were just working like students. It's just like preparing to appear for a competitive exam and then taking those mock tests. So they were actually doing all the mock exercises, and that is the reason they were so confident at the end of the day. The rest of the world was not, but they were. And but of course, there are sensitive moments which had to be guarded against, particularly when Chandrayaan 3 moves out of the Earth's orbit to go into the Moon's orbit. That's a critical moment because it is circling around the Earth. It took about 20 circles. I mean, going from an inner circle to the outer circle before it moves out, and then it goes translunar into the lunar circle. So it's like, you're driving a motor car, suddenly you change the track.
And also I'm told it's like threading a needle.
Absolutely.
It is so this thing, and if you miss it, it escapes lunar orbit and it's lost forever.
Absolutely, because if you don't get into that track, then you're not allowed into another track, which you might be doing in the roadside driving. Because here, because this is also, I think this is again remarkable. Many people ask this question, this is related to that. Why this mission so cost effective?
Right.
Whereas Russian mission 16,000 crores.
And they could reach much quicker also.
Yeah. That's because I think our scientists made up for this cost through their human resource. They were making the best use of the gravitational forces, the natural condition. So then they went into the moon's orbit. They started again circling from outer circle.
Right.
Then that's why they were taking time.
Right.
But it's just like you're driving a car, and when you come down to the slope, you put it neutral to save fuel. So that's why we were saving on fuel, though we took longer time, almost a month. So when it reached the innermost circle, so that is one critical point when moving out from one orbit to the other orbit. I mean, that's what I was a little nervous about. And the other part is the last few hours.
And you were sitting in that control room, I would gather. And what was your thoughts as you saw that?
Those of us who have been closely associated with the mission are also conscious of the timeline and the sensitive, moments.
Just 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and you're down.
And we are very conscious of the fact that just when the spaceship arrives about just 300 kilometers close to the surface of the moon, the speed suddenly goes down from as much as 6,000 kilometers per hour to just about 200, 250 kilometers per hour. And out of the 4 engines, 2 engines shut down. And finally, the most sensitive period when one feels almost helpless is when it goes down to about 100 meters, because then you lose contact. And then it's left to the wisdom of Vikram. So that is,
and you had your fingers like this.
That is the test. How good you have trained this boy to handle the situation on his own. It's just like training a soldier and sending him to the front, and then leaving it to his discretion when to fire, when not to, because then you are not with him. So there, of course, it has a scanner, it has a camera which picks up the pictures, allows it the freedom to choose the exact point where it must land within that given radius. But the time limit is given. It's not like an aircraft. You see the pilots sometimes, taking rounds above the New Delhi skies.
Because your fuel is limited. And
if it is not able to negotiate within that given span of time, then it gets put off to the next day. That's how some of the newspapers reported it could be 27th of August, because that was the next compatible date. But in this case, it so happened that the moment it came down, it didn't even have to look around. It just went straight. It, in fact, landed a few moments or a few minutes even before the expected time.
And so when you were there at that mission, what was your immediate reaction when you saw that? You were part of that.
I think spontaneously everybody jumped up.
And you did too.
From their chair. So it was so spontaneous.
And I gather a huge sigh of relief as well, because you've seen the sadness that happened and to see the joy.
Absolutely. And we were also, because the whole nation was watching this time, unlike last time. And that again also happened because it had opened up. Last time we were still not opened up in the way it is now. Even when the launching happened on the 14th of August from Sriharikota, there were as many as about not less than 1,000 media persons.
No, and apart from that, a whole lot of youngsters. And I think that's the wonderful part.
We had boys, girls from schools, colleges. We had visitors from across the section of society, right from the state of Punjab up to the state of Kerala. I was
amazing.
amazed.
I used to be a lonely watcher when I used to see launches in the 80s.
You were privileged to cover that. Otherwise, it was forbidden. So that gave a feeling of belonging to every section of society. This is our mission. So in a way,
you mean that weighed also in some senses while you were sitting there, that you were looking at the nation.
We came, accountable to the entire nation, and more so also accountable to the Honourable Prime Minister, because he's been so indulgent, extraordinarily indulgent, and he's been indulgent after second mission also, Chandrayaan 2 also. So we had to live up to that expectation when he said that sometimes not being successful is a step towards being successful.
Wonderful.
So that was a wonderful dictum he gave. And so we had to live up to that.
Not being successful is a step towards being successful. But that's what I wanted to get to you. You have now succeeded, or India has succeeded in the space program. What next? Is this a one-off thing? We just do this and we hold it as a trophy and say we've landed. What are your plans for the lunar mission ahead?
We have plans, of course, as far as the spaceships are concerned. Of course, we have Aditya 1, then Gaganyaan, then Venus, And simultaneously, we are going to have huge number of launchings from the private sector also. This is also happened after, the Prime Minister opened up to the private participation. So there's so much of enthusiasm, there's so much of private launching. But simultaneously, we are also attending to the other part of it, space technology in the other infrastructure sectors.
Right. I'll come to that. I just want to know on the moon mission itself. You have done Chandrayaan 3. Is there a Chandrayaan 4, Chandrayaan 5, Chandrayaan
Actually,
6?
that will be determined on the inferences that we obtain from Chandrayaan 3. So after that is studied, then we plan the next, how best we move, and what are the inferences, where to move from here. Like for example, in Chandrayaan 1, nobody actually knew or expected that we would get evidence of the presence of water molecules through spectrometry. That was, something out of imagination or expecting. So when it happened, we started planning the next mission to carry on further, because suddenly it occurred that if it is water, it could be hydrogen also, it could be oxygen also, and H2O. So likewise, now this mission is going to get us information about the mineral composition, about the presence of magnesium, calcium, how compatible or less compatible with the possibility of human habitat, human life, how possible, how much of the potential for petroleum, for minerals.
And then finally a colony on the moon, if you want to, yes.
But that would lead one step to the other.
So at the moment you are evaluating, but there is definitely going to be a series coming out at some point of time.
Yes.
I mean, it's not ending with Chandrayaan 2.
No, that's
this is not Ant mein ye bas ho gaya.
Absolutely not. There's no end in space missions, absolutely, because they carry on from one level to the other.
So we have a Chandrayaan moon mission program that will keep going on with the numbers that's there. You also have the Japanese tie-up with the JAXA for a lunar mission, which we are providing the lander and the rover. So that will take forward next year or the year after.
We have a collaboration with now virtually most of the countries, and I think that's the best part of the collaboration is that we are, of course, with Russia and Soviet America equal partners, but in many ways more than equal. Like for example, now we are lending our launching services to America and to Russia. We have already earned, I think, more than 170.
And that's through satellites. That
We early earned more than 170 or $175 million from American satellites. Can you imagine? I mean, we were looking up to America for cues. Now they are using our satellite launching. Likewise, European satellites. I think virtually every European country, because many of them don't even have their own launching facility, or if they have, it's not of a given size.
And we have that niche that we can do.
So
but I wanted to come.
I think more than maybe 250 or 260 million euros and more than $170 million from the other side. So it's in addition, that's the reason the space economy, that part of it, we are right now about 1 billion, which is not much in the sense it's just about 2-3%.
That's right.
But the quantum jump that has happened in the last 4 years after Prime Minister took this initiative has resulted in projections showing that we would be 40 billion by 2040. And just the other day, 2 days back, we had that famous report called ADL report, Arthur D. Little report, which says that it could go up to 100 million.
And
the pace in which it's rising.
Right, and that's largely because 100 million or 100 billion you're talking
100 billion.
Yeah, that's largely because, as you'd mentioned, the Prime Minister had decided to open up space to the private sector. In the past, the private sector could participate but never launch its own rockets and satellites.
Absolutely.
And that's the game changer.
Absolutely. I never hesitate saying, I'm saying this time and again, I said, one thing is proven and vindicated. There is no dearth of talent in India. We have a talent, we have cerebral, competence, which is higher possibly. I mean, and the level of commitment. Just imagine the pictures of Sarabhai, devoid of transport, carrying launcher on the bicycle.
The bullock carts and bicycles, I remember. Yes.
So that was one, but they were devoid of the resources, as you rightly said. And we had, for too long, unnecessarily confined ourselves into that, veil of secrecy, which was no longer required, because now with Google you can visualize anything happening. Right. So it didn't make much sense. So Prime Minister took a very realistic decision, and now, in addition to the industry investment happening, we have this whole ecosystem, which includes the National Research Foundation, legislation which was passed in the last session
That's
of the
right.
Parliament.
A lot of money is being put into that. 50,000 crores or something
Yeah,
like that?
out of 50,000 crore, 36,000 crore from the non-government sector. And I think that's a very progressive thinking, because from now onwards, if we have to grow, we have to grow wholesomely.
Right.
You cannot depend on the government sources alone. If we have to visualize for ourselves a global role,
Right.
then you have to have the global parameters and the global strategies, and that's what the Americans are doing. The NASA is no longer, dependent on the government sources.
Do you see ISRO, like you rightly pointed out, NASA is now a regulatory agency and also funding things, but it doesn't build its own, barring a few things. Do you see ISRO finally heading towards that way, where you get our Indian private sector actually building the rockets, building the even the lunar mission if necessary, and then the government, of course, paying some of the money on this one? Do you see that as something that is...
I think that process of synergy is happening gradually and very progressively. Like, for example, when we opened up just about 3 years back, it was a new experience. Most of our private startups, now we have more than 150 startups. That's one heartening feature in just 3 years. So the early set of startups were mostly confined to launching of satellites. Some of them just launching for experiment. Now they are trying to launch orbital.
Right.
Now we are getting the startups who are actually looking forward to what you are, indicating, the translational technologies.
Right.
They want to
be an Elon Musk or a Jeff Bezos.
And the other day only, one of the early startups who came to us just about 3-4 years back, they are now setting up a manufacturing unit in Hyderabad. So they are turning into entrepreneurs, making a fortune for themselves, and also, looking forward to become suppliers of equipment to ISRO. So we are heading towards a scenario where there will be little demarcation between private and the public sector. It will be totally an integrated approach, and I think that is also very ideally suited. So in the National Research Foundation, the Anusandhan that we had visualized for India, we have a very wide extended integration avenue in that, in the sense that we have a large presence of industry in that executive council, plus, which is something which is not often done, we have the representatives of the humanities, of the social sciences.
Which so is that, quite, so overall development.
They could give us the perspective from the other side as well.
No, the other thing I wanted to say is that we have also now signed the Artemis Agreement, which is 27 countries, including headed by the US and NASA, and the whole mission is to bring humans back to the moon by 2025. What is the kind of level of participation you see India doing in the Artemis project? How does it benefit India? Because we also signed an agreement to send, I think, an Indian to the International Space Station as well.
I think the very fact that more than India, it was America which is keen to engage us in Artemis Agreement is itself a statement, because they realize the importance of India. No longer as a country which was looking up to them for cues, but as a country which could be a partner, which could sometimes be offering cues to them. And that's also the reason, as you rightly said, it was America which solicited our astronauts to accompany them to the International Space Station. So I think that has also risen the esteem of the Indian scientific fraternity, and more evidently than ever before, the India's space acumen is now proven to the world. I think the easiest example is that if you ever visit NASA, the current crop of scientists there is mostly from India.
Yes, that's true. That's true. So our collaboration with NASA and other countries on lunar mission is something that we are serious about. We would like to be part of that larger...
It has been there.
The return to the moon is...
It's been there. We've been, in fact, even Chandrayaan 3, one of the instruments is from NASA. So
that's correct.
That collaboration is there, but it's no longer the case that we were, lesser cousins.
That's a good word. But coming to the other projects that we have, one of the things we're looking at is Gaganyaan. And this is putting an Indian spaceship going up and orbiting the Earth. I mean, we have never done that. We have had Rakesh Sharma in the past. Of course, we had, Sunita Williams and Kalpana Chawla from Americans who were doing it. But we've never had an indigenous orbiter, human going into space and orbiting it. So what is the, where are we in Gaganyaan, and how quickly do you think we'll get someone up?
Just to take up from what you said, we have had Indian astronauts, but not an indigenous. So this is going to be purely indigenous mission, and the best part of it is just going to cost 10,000 crore So when Chandrayaan 3 cost us just 600 crore, less than the Hollywood movie made on these space themes, some of them. So the 10,000 crore is not that heavy an amount if you see the kind of amount that is spent by some of the other nations. And yeah, the stage now is that actually we had a very ambitious plan of getting Gaganyaan accomplished somewhere around the 75th year of India's independence, maybe 22, 23. But unfortunately, the pandemic came in, so we got delayed by 2-3 years. In fact, precisely at the time of the lockdown, some of our potential astronauts were undergoing a stint of training in Moscow in the famous Gregory Institute, so they had to be called back. So the whole thing then got shut down. Now it's been revived. I think now, before the actual mission, we have planned to have 2 trial missions, because sending our human being is important, getting him back.
Yes.
Where to get him back? We have already identified 2 or 3 locations close to the water, and that will be a collective exercise. The naval functionaries would be there, the coastal guards would be there. So we had planned the first trial in September, but I think it will not be possible September, maybe in the first half of October. So there's about a month or so.
That's right.
So that will go up for a few hours, follow the itinerary, come back, and land where it is expected. The second trial is going to be more significant, because it will have actually an astronaut, a robo-astronaut.
Right, a crew module kind of a thing with the robo.
It's going to be a female robo called Vayomitra. So she'll go there, perform all the same activity, which is actually going to be performed by the human astronaut in the subsequent mission. And after having accomplished all that, then she will follow the same path coming back. She'll land, then she'll have to be received back in the same manner as we, receive the human being, precisely in that manner. And once we are satisfied and confident about that, then of course the third mission, which will happen somewhere in 2024.
That's what you're expecting. The other thing, coming to the end of our conversation on this is, you have Aditya going up, and there have been over 50 solar missions by other countries. This is our first mission. Just like in Chandrayaan, where you chose a South Pole to contribute, a virgin territory as you called it, is there something special about what we are planning is different from that, or this is just an exploratory mission?
Actually, this is more or less an exploratory, and this is the initial mission.
Right.
So we would just like to expose ourselves to this terrain, and then maybe move forward.
Right.
But in the process, if we happen to pick up something which has not been picked up earlier, like Chandrayaan 1 got back with the evidence of water which we didn't know, so that you can never say.
So this will largely be studying the sun's corona and the entire corona, the structure that is around.
Absolutely. Okay. From the position where we are placed.
Right. Okay. Then the other missions, you had Mangalyaan, and we haven't seen a repeat of that. Is that on the anvil? Do you see us going to Venus, to Mars?
Yes, there is Venus and Mangalyaan, of course. Now that you mentioned, we had sent it up just for 3 years. It's still there.
Correct.
And it kept sending us signals for more than 5 years or so. Now also it is there, but functionally it's not very productive, because it's already completed all the tasks that have been assigned to it.
Right.
So, but it's still moving there. It still stayed there. And yes, next we can follow it, but that will be planned after the Aditya and Mangalyaan.
So there will be a Mangalyaan 2, and do you hope to put a rover or at least a lander into that?
Let's see that. We are still working out that. Right. And meanwhile, the International Space Station in America may also come up.
Okay. So are we into, China's planning International Space Station of its own? They want to also populate. Are we planning, what is our ambitions overall in terms of space? To end this interview, what is our ambition really?
I don't know. We might be also, in the times to come, we are moving from one stage to another, but our pace of movement has increased. And I think what makes us distinct from the other countries is that our space experience is being to a great extent used for the ease of living.
Development objectives.
See, for railway lines, for unmanned rail crossings, for smart cities, for this ambitious Swamitva program which Prime Minister began for the mapping. So entire for
remote sensing,
telecommunication, telemedicine, tele-education, which is unlike other countries. We are now using it in a big way, and so we are also devoting much of our energies and our knowledge to putting up satellites for that purpose.
Correct.
The Navig satellite.
Right.
Also disaster management, as Prime Minister in his address yesterday very nicely put it. The amount of money that we have saved by preventing disasters is much, much more than a single mission.
Right.
So now, and I think in 2015-16, we put up a satellite purely dedicated to gathering information about the possible disasters, etc., which was unofficially called SARC satellite, because it caters to all the neighboring countries except Pakistan, which chose to be away from, out of it for to its own disadvantage. So we have Nepal, we have Bhutan, we have Bangladesh, we have Sri Lanka, all this. So we are now also using our space missions for this purpose.
Right.
The expansion of the television network in this country.
Which comes to my final question.
The digital, the new geospatial policy now. We are now reaching the, because India is a heterogeneous country, unlike most of the European countries, which have a very homogeneous terrain and homogeneous. So the last end of northeast possibly, where we couldn't reach otherwise, we have the satellite.
Remotest
regions. Similarly, in some of the peripheral areas where we don't even have the Airtel most of the private company towers or the mobile company towers, we are using the satellite physics. So our satellite missions our space missions are also dedicated to host a lot of other activities.
The development of the nation, and that's my final question to you. People would say that we've done wonderfully in terms of utilizing space technology for our own development and these various aspects that you talked about. But the question is, why should we be doing the moon project? Why should we be doing the other project? What is it that we are getting out of it that we should be doing this? We could as well just do it for development.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's a quite often asked question. I think there are 2 or 3 answers. A, apparently what is made out to be a very costly affair is not so. As I said, 600 crore just, not even a fraction of what others are sending. And not even it just amounts to construction of a good bridge.
Correct.
This is not much.
Right.
Even our express highways, the construction costs more. So that is one aspect that needs to be clarified, that it's not, we are very cost effective. The second part of it is the kind of esteem that is given to the nation. You see, using it in infrastructure development is one part, but the kind of esteem that it gives, the kind of romanticism is attached with this, as you saw in the Chandrayaan 3 landing. B. Third, later on, at some stage, if we actually succeed in discovering what we are seeking to discover, the minerals, the petroleum, the oxides, all those things, that could be adding value to our lives even on the earth.
Interesting.
So that could be a return.
Right.
So we are actually looking forward to a host lot of wide range of things.
And I would gather it also inspires all the youngsters
who
are watching this, so they also want to do this. I mean, it's the cutting edge of technology, and that's the
cutting edge. It inspires, of course. It raises the esteem of the nation, and it also gives you because see, once we are looking forward to a global role for ourselves, we also have to get recognition globally. So this is one parameter. So it's like that.
You're with the big boys now.
You are very good in studies, you have a subject, but how do you prove it?
Right.
So you have to prove it by scoring marks.
Right.
So this is also one competitive parameter where you have to actually establish yourself and now tell the world, look here, we are nowhere behind you. So that is one.
And you know that you are a doctor by profession as well, and certainly you have a lot of analogies in terms of how special you can get onto this one.
Absolutely. Even as medical professionals, telemedicine, I think it's going to be a miracle. We have now surgeries happening. The other day I was saying, in my time when we have been practicing, we refer, the patient asks, sir, if I need a surgery, please refer me to a good doctor. Now, the doctor would be referred to the patient. You need
and a robo will be telling you to go there.
You need to go to Mumbai or Chennai.
And I guess
to see. I would ask the doctor to refer. I'll refer the doctor to the patient in Delhi.
And finally, because you're a man of science in some senses, what is it that when you personally look at this, is it what is the experience you get? Because you've studied science, you've become a doctor. What is it that personally this means to you?
I think Indians traditionally have a scientific temper. Even a formally uneducated Indian would know how to think scientifically because he's been trained like that. If a housewife living in a remote village is asked to cook food without any tutoring, she knows she had to fetch wood from the forest and then she has to dry it up.
Right.
Then she knows how to prolong the fire.
So there is a scientific temperament, and the space program has taken it to a whole new level.
That has made us realize it. Right. Made us realize it.
But we've run out of time, Dr. Jitendra Singh. You've really been lucid about it. You've made several significant points. You have said that the Chandrayaan program is not a one-off. As soon as this is over, you will have more such programs. We are going to be part of that overall lunar quest that is there. That's the other big point. You said there's also solar that we'd like to do. We're also opening up space to the private sector in a big, big way, and allowing, just like the Elon Musks and Jeff Bezos, we might have our own, the way we are heading to. We've already been
research foundation.
We've already been highly successful, and also space is going to be continued to be employed in domestic development use. And that's what makes India, and also the frugal part. For all these points that you've given us, Dr. Jitendra Singh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And it was a real pleasure talking
it.
to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching this interview with Dr. Jitendra Singh. For more details, look at the latest issue of India Today, where we've done an extensive cover story of not only how they've scripted lunar history, Indian space scientists, but also looking ahead. Thank you for listening to or watching this episode of Nothing But the Truth. I look forward to having you with me in the next show. Nothing But the Truth.